Hello everyone. The story I want to tell you today took place in Connecticut, USA. This state has a mild climate and a long coastline around Long Island Sound, which has contributed to its long-standing maritime industry. Today, Connecticut is known as one of the wealthiest states in the USA. Moreover, it is home to prestigious universities such as Yale University, which attracts outstanding students from around the world. In 1986, a particularly challenging case unfolded here, perplexing investigators. The perpetrator had acted with extreme cunning, making it difficult for local police to solve the case for a long time. So what were the specific details of this incident? Let's rewind to December 1st, 1986, to delve deeper into the case. December 1st, 1986 was a Monday. Connecticut had just experienced a major snowstorm. Despite the bad weather, people were not greatly affected. After the snowstorm subsided, residents began going out shopping to prepare for the upcoming Christmas holidays. On that day, the police in Newtown, Connecticut received a call from a private detective named Keith Mayo. He reported that his client, Hella Lork Nielsen, had disappeared a few days earlier. He believed that her husband, Richard Crafts, was involved in her disappearance, so he called the police to request their assistance in investigating the matter. This private detective also provided additional information to the police. Hella's client was a flight attendant for Pan Am who had hired Keith several months earlier to investigate her husband's extramarital affair. They discovered that her husband was having an affair with a flight attendant from Eastern Airlines. Upon learning of this, Hella began gathering evidence in preparation for divorce. However, recently she had disappeared and could not be contacted. Police investigation revealed that Hella had not been seen since November 19th, over 10 days before the investigation began, and her car was found in the employee parking lot at her workplace. Initially, the police did not pay much attention to this incident, believing it was simply a marital dispute, where the wife had decided to leave to relieve stress and would return home safely. Because the person accused by the detective was Richard Crafts, a pilot for Eastern Airlines, and also a part-time volunteer police officer in town who had no bad habits. Therefore, after receiving the call, they waited until the next day before sending police to investigate. According to Richard's statement, he and Hella had 3 children, and their family lived very happily. On the evening of November 18th, before leaving home, there was nothing unusual. They even planned to take the children to his sister's house to play, but the next morning when he woke up, he didn't see his wife anywhere. He speculated that she had received an unexpected notice to fly somewhere, as his wife was a flight attendant who often flew around. Sometimes she wouldn't come home for 10 days, which was normal, so when he didn't see his wife, he didn't feel anything unusual. At that time, the couple had a slight disagreement, both suspecting each other of having an affair and were in a period of argument, so they didn't contact each other. Richard's explanation sounded reasonable, but the police still felt something was not right. In the following days, they continued to focus on this case, and new clues kept emerging, making the situation even more perplexing. The incident took place in Connecticut, where Dr. Lee Chang-yu, an American of Chinese descent known as the contemporary Sherlock Holmes, was residing. He had been involved in solving over 8,000 intriguing and mysterious cases throughout his lifetime. At the time, the police wanted to resolve the case as soon as possible, so they invited him to join the investigation. Upon receiving the invitation, Dr. Lee immediately began his investigation. Initially, he started looking into Hella's relationships. It didn't take long for him to uncover some leads. The 19-year-old babysitter at Hella's home named Dawn Marie Thomas abruptly quit her job right after Hella went missing, which was quite suspicious. Dr. Lee quickly tracked down the babysitter and found out that she was not involved in the disappearance. However, during the interview, he gathered some important information. According to the babysitter, on the night before Hella went missing, she was awakened by a strange noise inside the house. At the time, she didn't pay much attention and thought it might have been something knocked over by the snowstorm outside. The next morning, Richard the homeowner reported that the house had lost power due to some incidents the previous night. In such freezing weather, having no electricity for heating was not ideal at all. Therefore, he decided to take the whole family to visit his sister's house in Westport, about 35 kilometers away from Newtown, where the family currently lived. At that time, the babysitter didn't see Hella and instinctively asked where she was and why everyone didn't go together. Richard replied that Hella had already left beforehand, and after arriving at their destination, he immediately left the others and drove away. By 7 p.m., Richard picked them up and returned home. During their time there, the babysitter did not see Hella anywhere. The day after, while Marie was cleaning up, she discovered a fairly large black stain on the bedroom carpet. When she asked Richard, she learned that it was motor oil, and he immediately cut out the dirty part of the carpet and threw it away. Marie felt something was wrong and fearful, so she resigned and returned home. Dr. Lee began to investigate further into Hella's colleagues and friends and discovered that Richard had given multiple different versions regarding his wife's absence. For instance, he said his wife had gone to Germany and would return after a while, or she had gone back to her hometown to care for her sick mother. When asked too many questions, he replied that he didn't know where his wife was. Some of Hella's friends said Richard often imposed dominance over the family, had a bad temper, collected weapons, and had extramarital affairs. Hella had also been physically abused by him. Some friends informed the police that before her disappearance, Hella had said, "If something happens to me, it definitely won't be an accident. I want a divorce as soon as possible." Based on the information obtained, Dr. Lee was certain that Richard was hiding something. Immediately, the police listed Richard as a prime suspect. They suspected that a conflict over the divorce might have led him to violently kill his wife. After further investigation, more unusual signs gradually surfaced. Private Detective Keith Mayo, who also felt something was amiss, began investigating. Upon hearing Marie's account of the carpet, he believed there must be significant evidence on it. After investigation, he learned that Richard's family garbage area was often transported elsewhere. He hired 9 more people and spent several days digging in the landfill, where he found a carpet that was identical to Hella's carpet at home, with a large stain still visible on it. Upon hearing Dr. Lee accept responsibility for investigating the disappearance, he immediately sent that carpet sample to the police for investigation. However, when the carpet sample reached the police, it was severely contaminated from being deep in the landfill. After checking, they couldn't determine whether the stain on the carpet was blood or not. When investigators checked Richard's bank records and phone records, they found some suspicious points. Credit card bills showed that on November 13th, before Hell went missing, Richard spent $375 at a store in London to buy a large freezer. Why did he buy a large freezer in winter? What was his plan? According to the investigation, the item he needed wasn't available in the store and had to be ordered, taking about 4 days to arrive. The store requested Richard to provide information for delivery, but he refused. 4 days later, he returned to the store and personally transported the large freezer home. After that day, Richard's bank card incurred an additional $900 fee to rent a certain type of machine. From contact records on Richard's phone, the police discovered he had contacted a company to rent a wood chipper. He claimed some trees had fallen due to the snowstorm in front of his house, necessitating the rental of a wood chipper to handle them. On November 18, 1986, Richard went to the company and rented the most powerful and largest wood chipper available. This wood chipper could grind branches and tree trunks with a diameter of up to 30 centimeters. On November 19, 1986, Richard's bank card note indicated he purchased a set of bedding for a new bed. By this time, it was evident that Richard's actions were highly suspicious. However, lacking concrete evidence and with Hella still missing, the police were unable to do more. By December 26th, nearly a month after receiving the final search warrant approval while Richard and his family were on a vacation abroad, the police immediately searched his house and found some suspicious points. Firstly, the carpet sample found in the landfill matched perfectly with the shape of the carpet in Richard's master bedroom. Secondly, they discovered some very rare bloodstains. Dr. Lee found 5 bloodstains that were hard to spot without careful observation, located at the corner of the bed in the bedroom. After multiple tests, these bloodstains were found to belong to blood type O, matching Hella's blood type, and they were not menstrual bloodstains. Thirdly, in their bathroom, there were many large towels, and police discovered that several towels in Richard's bathroom reacted to blood tests. From this information, it could be determined that Hella was murdered, but where was her body? According to USA law, a suspect cannot be convicted of murder without the victim's body. Therefore, Dr. Lee decided to conduct a lie detector test on Richard. However, he successfully passed the test 3 times. So was Richard the real perpetrator? Dr. Lee still believed that his analyses couldn't be wrong. He suspected the lie detector results a scientific device used to record physiological changes like respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, and skin moisture when normal individuals are questioned to determine whether they are lying. In other words, if professionally trained, one could remain calm and pass a lie detector test. After further investigation, Dr. Lee discovered that before becoming a pilot, Richard had served in the Marine Corps and even worked for the CIA, performing various covert missions. This meant Richard was someone akin to James Bond in the movies, trained professionally in maintaining national secrets and capable of convincingly lying. Therefore, lie detector tests for Richard were simply routine. Just as the police were at an impasse after the lie detector tests, seemingly unrelated news suddenly appeared, completely changing the investigation's course. After the case was widely reported by the international press, the police faced immense public pressure. In this situation, Dr. Lee's investigative team discovered some unrelated events that provided a new lead. A few months earlier, there was an incident that made local residents uncomfortable. A man was continuously annoyed by the noisy dog from the neighboring house. This made him furious, and he caught the dog and threw it directly into a wood chipper, shredding the dog into pieces. This incident quickly made headlines in some newspapers, and gradually more people became aware of the story. The investigative team recalled that Richard had also rented a large wood chipper. After investigating and surveying, they found a witness named Joseph Hine, who was a snowplow operator on the highway. Joseph stated that at the time, continuous snowfall over several days had led to a significant accumulation of snow. To ensure smooth traffic, he was assigned to snowplow duty on the highway during the night shift. Around 3 a.m. on November 19th, he saw a driver passing by towing a large wood chipper towards the lake. The man also stopped by the roadside for a while. Joseph wondered why anyone would dare to face such a snowstorm to operate a wood chipper outdoors at night. It was quite peculiar. He was deeply impressed by this man. When the police showed him pictures for identification, Joseph immediately recognized the driver as Richard. With this new information, the investigative team speculated that Richard likely moved his wife's body to the lakeside and disposed of it using the wood chipper. Upon discovering this crucial lead, the investigative team immediately focused on Lake Zoar. After several days of searching, they found scattered wood pieces along the lakeshore. Fortunately, along with these wood pieces, they also discovered some scraps of paper with Hela's address. This seemed to be the disposal site. However, Lake Zoar was vast and deep, making a comprehensive search akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Facing this difficulty, Dr. Lee devised a special method. He rented an identical wood chipper to the one Richard had rented before and purchased a processed pig. After freezing it, he threw the pig directly into the wood chipper using the distance that the pig bones were crushed and ejected to determine the range of body disposal. Ultimately, this experiment proved that objects ejected from the wood chipper could only travel up to 4.6 meters at most, with lighter objects found nearer the shore. This experiment provided a relatively clear understanding of how Richard could have disposed of his wife's body using the wood chipper. Based on these clues, the police organized a search team, dividing them into two groups. The first group searched along the lakeshore using grid methods, while the second group consisted of divers searching in deeper areas. They also requested the authorities to lower the water level in the lake to facilitate the search. Finally, under meticulous police investigation, they discovered Hela's remains. Besides the remaining fragments after being shredded, they found a total of 2,660 hair strands, 69 bone fragments, 2 teeth, a piece of skull, a fingernail, a toenail, and various other materials. More importantly, they found an electric saw at the bottom of the lake. The investigative team also found some pieces of skin seemingly invisible to the naked eye on the saw blade, along with hair fragments and some green fibers that match materials found at Richard's home. However, the serial number on the electric saw had been carefully erased. Using a special acid, the investigative team restored the serial number, ultimately recovering serial number 5921616. After cross-referencing with Richard's purchase receipt for the saw, it was confirmed that this serial number matched perfectly. Furthermore, the hair samples were compared with Hela's parents, showing similar colors. At that time, DNA comparison technology was not available, making the identification of fragmented remains extremely challenging. The fingernail found was compared to a nail polish bottle on Hela's makeup table. Chemical analysis showed a perfect match between them. The police concluded that Richard had assaulted his wife at least twice with a blunt object in the bedroom to prevent discovery. He came up with the idea of disposing of his wife using a wood chipper, believing it would render her body unidentifiable. However, realizing the wood chipper couldn't shred softer materials effectively, he went to buy a large freezer to place his wife's body inside. Once the body froze solid, he proceeded to use an electric saw to divide it into pieces, then used the wood chipper to spray them into the lake for fish to consume, erasing all traces. On January 13th, 1987, the Connecticut State Medical Examiner's Office received documentation from the police and issued a death certificate for Richard, who had concealed the truth and was immediately arrested. This case caused a significant shock across the United States. Due to the widespread coverage of the case, it was transferred to New London for the trial in May 1988. Over the next 2 weeks, more than 100 witnesses appeared in court, presenting over 650 pieces of evidence. After a grueling 54-day trial of the 12 jury members, 11 found Richard guilty, while 1 believed he was not guilty, resulting in a hung jury. On November 21, 1989, nearly 3 years after the crime, a second trial was held in Norwalk with clearer witnesses and evidence. The jury concluded that Richard was guilty and sentenced him to 50 years in prison. On January 30th, 2020, after serving 31 years, Richard was released and moved to live in an old house about 32 kilometers away. He was released early due to improved behavior in prison. This case drew significant attention, not only because of the heinous nature of the crime, but also because it was the first murder case in Connecticut's history, where the prosecutor still brought charges despite the body not being found. Ultimately, the successful resolution of this case was not only due to Dr. Lee's intelligence, but also the dedication of every police officer involved in the investigation. Additionally, private investigators hired by Hella's family also made significant contributions, because behind every murder case there is at least one victim and one grieving family. In our lives, we all face difficulties at times, don't we? Sometimes we wonder why our lives aren't flourishing like others. Why is it that while we are trying to find a job, other people already have stable incomes? Sometimes we feel lonely and wonder why others always have companions, someone to support them and walk hand in hand in happiness while we don't. Have you ever thought that it might just be the superficial part of our lives? We truly don't know what is happening around us and what difficulties the people around us have faced in their lives. At around 4 p.m. on May 4th, 2014, in the city of Duzhou, Shandong Province, a young man living in a city thousands of kilometers away made a phone call to report that he had suddenly lost contact with his parents who were living in Duzhou, and he wanted the police to come and check if there was any problem. Both of his parents were over 50 years old and retired. Moreover, his father was in a wheelchair and couldn't move easily, so it was unlikely that his parents had gone far. Since yesterday afternoon, he had made several phone calls to their home, but no one answered. Upon receiving the notification, a group of police officers went to the address provided by the young man. The couple lived in apartment 1403 of a new housing complex located in the suburbs of the city. When the police arrived at the house, the door was locked and there was a bad sign right at the doorstep, a small bloodstain. The police quickly called the locksmith team for assistance, and when the door was opened, a strong smell of blood filled the air inside. The living room in the house became chaotic, with the constant opening and closing of doors, and there were small bloodstains on the windows. There was a long bloodstain on the floor, indicating signs of dragging. All the drawers, large and small, were opened and showed signs of search and rummaging, clearly indicating that these actions were aimed at finding valuables. The trail of blood on the living room floor led to the balcony on the southern side, where a severely injured body with multiple bloodstains was dragged. This blood trail only led to the balcony near the flower pot on the windowsill, which had been shattered. There was a naked woman lying slanted against the wall with her face leaning towards it, and next to her was a dry bath towel. The woman's bath towel was soaked in blood and thrown aside. This is the owner of the house, Yu Yuan, 57 years old, who is the mother of the person who made the phone call. The body of the woman had multiple wounds caused by sharp objects, and the man's wheelchair was still in the living room, along with the wheel, which had many bloodstains. This indicates that the man in the wheelchair had also been injured. The man's name is Liu Fa, 58 years old, who had previously suffered serious injuries in an industrial accident, and this wheelchair was his means of transportation. But where is the man now? The police speculated that he might have been controlled and taken away by the perpetrator because there were bloodstains outside the door. Continuing to search the two bedrooms, the police found that the situation was even worse than the living room. The closet doors and drawers were all opened, and clothes, documents, and miscellaneous items were scattered everywhere. The room became chaotic with no place remaining tidy, but what the police were most concerned about was the bed in the west bedroom. There was blood splattered on the bed and the mattress was pushed towards the wardrobe, indicating clear signs of struggle or wrestling. Near the bedroom door, there were multiple small bloodstains and blood footprints on the floor, forming a trail from the bed to the wardrobe, about 80 centimeters apart, but it had been covered with clothes and miscellaneous items thrown on top. When the police moved them to examine, they unexpectedly discovered the dead body of a man lying face down on the ground parallel to the bed. Both occupants of this house had been killed. The police began to conduct a detailed investigation at the crime scene to determine the motives and reasons behind the suspect's actions. However, the chaotic and disarrayed room made it difficult to determine the starting point of the tragedy. The table in the living room remained intact and tidy, with an open bottle of strong liquor on it, containing only about 300 ml of alcohol. The bottle had a unique shape resembling a gourd, but what was unusual was the absence of drinking glasses on the table, indicating that neither the victim nor the perpetrator had shared a drink together. Furthermore, there were clear bloodstains on the liquor bottle. In the west bedroom, the police found a box of the same brand as the liquor bottle in the living room. This box was typically used to hold 2 bottles, but there was only 1 bottle left inside. Based on this, the police concluded that this bottle belonged to the victim and had been consumed by the suspect after committing the crime, as there were bloodstains on the bottle. If it had been consumed before the incident, there would not have been any blood fingerprints on it. Based on the fact that the remaining liquor bottle was less than 300 milliliters, it indicated that the perpetrator had consumed nearly a liter of alcohol after the killings, suggesting that his mental state at the time was likely out of control and frenzied. The madness of the murderer was not only manifested through the horrifying chaos at the crime scene, but also through deliberate destructive actions. After the crime, he disconnected the gas pipeline and cut off the gas supply, indicating that the perpetrator wanted to create a gas explosion to destroy the crime scene or commit suicide. However, in the end, he abandoned that idea, opened a window, and fled. On May 4th, the blood-soaked murder case shook the previously peaceful area. 2 people were killed, including a disabled person. The police paid particular attention to the bloodstains on the floor and near the door. Based on the area and location of these bloodstains, they deduced that the suspect may have been seriously injured during the struggle with the victim. Although the room was in a chaotic state, the windows and entrances remained intact without any signs of forced entry. So how did the perpetrator gain access to the crime scene? It is possible that the suspect was acquainted with the victim and was invited into the house. After confirmation from the victim's autopsy, it was determined that the male victim died from 14 stab wounds, primarily on the face, neck, chest, and abdomen. Although the female victim showed signs of destruction, there were no indications of sexual assault. Near the body, there was a bath towel and a shower head in the bathroom with the water still running. The police temporarily reconstructed the crime scenario, suggesting that the perpetrator and the male victim were sitting and talking in the living room, followed by a conflict, and the attacker assaulting the man in a wheelchair. At that moment, the wife heard the cries for help from the bathroom and rushed to assist, but was attacked and stabbed by the perpetrator. The male victim attempted to flee when he fell off the wheelchair, but was dragged back into the bedroom by the assailant. After attacking and killing both victims, he rummaged through the wardrobe to search for money and valuable items while also throwing clothing and documents onto the body of the man on the ground. After finishing the search in the bedroom, he returned to the living room to continue searching. The behavior of the suspect was very peculiar because after committing the crime, he drank alcohol and attempted to ignite a gas explosion before opening a window and escaping. It is unclear why the perpetrator was allowed into the house by the victims, and his method of killing was exceptionally brutal, yet he searched for belongings like in a contradictory robbery case. The clues have been sent for DNA analysis and evidence search, while an investigation into the social relationship of the victim couple is also underway. Mr. Liu Fa and Mrs. Yu Yuan have retired from a boiler manufacturing plant for many years, and their social relationship is very normal, with rarely any conflicts with anyone. However, nearly 2 months ago, they called the police on the evening of March 6th to report that someone had violently banged on their door, causing them both to be very frightened and unwilling to open the door. When the police asked the couple about the reason or suspected who might have caused this incident, initially both of them hesitated and didn't want to say, but eventually Mr. Fa mentioned that it could be an old friend of his named Wang Qiang. They stated that Wang Qiang worked in waste material procurement and had a close relationship with the boiler manufacturing plant. Mr. Fa and Mrs. Yuan got to know Wang Qiang at this factory. However, they didn't mention any conflicts with Qiang, they only appeared apprehensive and worried. When the police continued to question them, they said they were also unsure if the person was actually Wang Qiang and didn't want to request the police to search for or take any action against Qiang. So why didn't Mr. and Mrs. Liu Fa want to talk about Wang Qiang? And does Qiang have any connection to the murder of these 2 victims? At this moment, the police had obtained DNA test results and retained fingerprints at the crime scene. Comparing them with the national database, they discovered that the DNA traces found at the crime scene belonged to Wang Qiang, and there were numerous blood fingerprints of his at the crime scene. When the police checked the surveillance cameras in the area, they found that around 2 p.m. on May 3rd, a man carrying a black crossbody bag appeared and entered the area where the victim's apartment was located. This person was a highly suspicious individual, but the surveillance camera's viewpoint was limited. In the first angle of view, the perpetrator quickly passed by and took a few steps to a large tree that obscured him. In the second angle of view, almost his entire body was hidden by a car parked in front of the area, and only his back could be seen. In both angles, the police couldn't clearly see the man's face. The police requested the victim's relatives to identify, and they firmly affirmed that this person was indeed Wang Qiang. However, it was strange that after reviewing the surveillance video multiple times, the police only saw his image when he entered the area but didn't see him leaving the neighborhood. While all entrances and exits of the neighborhood were monitored, how Wang Qiang left the area remained a mystery. At that time, the security guard reported that in the afternoon of May 3rd, a black car was parked in the neighborhood. This car caused traffic obstruction, so the security guard went to check who it belonged to. They determined that the car didn't belong to any residents in the neighborhood, but they couldn't contact the owner. The police shifted their focus from searching for the person to searching for the car. They quickly found this black car through the license plate and determined that it belonged to Wang Qiang. The car entered the neighborhood in the afternoon of May 3rd from around 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. The police tracked the car's journey based on the traffic surveillance system outside the neighborhood, but after passing through 2 intersections, the car completely disappeared. Due to the lack of surveillance cameras at this point, tracing the car's whereabouts became difficult. After that, the police proceeded to investigate the relationships of Wang Qiang's relatives. The first person under investigation was his son, who stated that on May 3rd his father came to visit him and gave him 10,000 yuan, telling him to live well and not to worry about him anymore. Wang Qiang also mentioned that he would leave the car near an industrial area on the outskirts of Duzhou City, and he could retrieve the car later. Qiang's son appeared very concerned about what his father said, but his father didn't provide any further explanation and hastily drove away. On the 4th of May, the police found the black car in an industrial area on the outskirts of Duzhou City. In the passenger seat of the car, the police found a black crossbody bag. Upon comparing the crossbody bag, it closely resembled the bag worn by the suspicious man captured on the surveillance camera. The police discovered blood traces on the steering wheel and driver's side door. They collected the blood samples and conducted DNA tests, which revealed that all the blood traces belonged to Wang Qiang. This indicated that Wang Qiang had abandoned the car there and continued to flee. Although Qiang's son didn't know where his father was going, he sensed something peculiar in his father's behavior. He mentioned that prior to leaving, Qiang sat in the car and made a phone call to his younger brother. The police went to search for Qiang's younger brother, Wang Tai, but discovered that he was also missing. The police continued to check the cameras in the area to track T's activities since he left home. Through surveillance footage on the last road, the police determined that Qiang met Tai on the evening of the 3rd of May in Ningqi district. The two of them hired a black taxi and left Duzhou City. Based on information from toll stations on the highway, the police quickly identified the license plate of the black taxi and located the driver. The driver revealed that he noticed one of the passengers in the car had an injured hand, and during their conversation he overheard them talking about going to the Ningqi District Hospital for bandaging. Subsequently, the driver dropped both individuals off at the gate of Ningqi District Hospital. The police continued to inspect the security cameras at the hospital and discovered that at 1:30 a.m. on the 4th of May, Qiang and Tai appeared at the north gate of the hospital. However, after lingering in the area in front of the hospital for a while, they didn't enter and continued to leave. The police collected surveillance images along the road and were surprised to find that in the subsequent footage, Qiang and T went in different directions. When T left, Qiang stood anxiously in one corner and paced back and forth. That moment was around 4:30 a.m. after Wang T had left. Before disappearing again, there were no recorded images of Qiang after he walked a distance. Wang T called a taxi and returned to Duzhou City alone. The reason why T returned to Duzhou and Qiang vanished from the surveillance images remains unclear. The police launched a comprehensive investigation between Duzhou and Ningqi on the 4th of May, and they found Wang Tai in Duzhou district. It was only then that the reason for the two brothers' escape from Duzhou to Ningqi on the night of the 3rd of May became clear. Wang Ti tearfully explained to the police that his older brother was injured in a brawl and wanted to find a place for treatment and rest. Tai believed that his brother had gotten into a serious fight with someone and wanted to leave the area for a while also seeking medical attention for his injuries. Therefore, he suggested going to Ningqi, and the two brothers hired a taxi to go to Ningqi District Hospital. However, upon arrival, Qiang revealed the truth to his younger brother. Wang Ti recounted that his brother worked as a scrap metal collector and had many connections with steel factories. The Liu Fa couple, who were acquainted with Wang Qiang, met him at a boiler manufacturing plant. At that time, Fa was working as a manager at the boiler manufacturing plant. Qiang often buys some scrap steel from the factory to sell to Fa at a low price. They have collaborated many times, and later Fa mentioned that there was a large batch worth nearly 100,000 yuan, but could be sold to Wang Qiang for a slightly lower price of 60,000 yuan. However, a deposit of 30,000 yuan had to be paid first. Due to their previous successful collaborations and no issues, Qiang trusted Fa and gave him 30,000 yuan. Shortly after, Fa had a serious accident at the workshop and retired early. Qiang was worried that his business would come to a halt and repeatedly urged Fa to return the money, but Fa always assured him that everything would be fine and asked Qiang to wait. However, this situation dragged on for several years. During this extended period, Qiang faced many difficulties in his business. His wife left, taking their daughter, and his grandchild suffered from a congenital disease because they didn't have enough money for a treatment. Under these pressures, Chiang lost control and argued with Fa and his wife multiple times over the money issue. Mr. Fa had already undergone leg surgery the previous year and was also experiencing financial difficulties with medication. Mr. Fa was also ill and could only borrow 10,000 yuan to take his wife for medical treatment. If Chiang wanted to take this amount, Mr. Fa could only repay Chiang 10,000 yuan and ask for further leniency. Chiang believed that Fa and his wife had the money but didn't want to repay, so after a heated argument he became furious and killed both victims. He then searched the entire house, but found that Fa only had 10,000 yuan in the safe and a few hundred yuan in other drawers. At this point, Chiang felt desperate and remorseful, considering committing suicide by igniting a gas cylinder in the room. However, he remembered his son's family, including his 1-year-old grandchild who needed money for medical treatment. Therefore, he went and gave the last 10,000 yuan to his son before leaving. After hearing the truth, Wang Ti was extremely shocked and looked at his deeply wounded older brother. With a conflicted and worried state of mind, Chiang decided that Wang Ti should return to Duzhou to avoid being implicated. After much hesitation, the two brothers embraced each other one last time and said their goodbyes. Afterward, Wang Chiang disappeared and no one knew where he went. After analyzing and evaluating the case in more detail and gathering information from the locals describing a stranger appearing in the area, the police continued to trace Wang Chiang and search for him. They sent hundreds of search notices to police stations in the area and issued a wanted order to find Wang Chiang. However, after an intensive search for half a month, no significant leads were discovered. Around 4 p.m. on June 9, 2014, residents of a village in Nanxi District, Hebei Province, went to the rice fields near the village and discovered a body in the well used to supply water to the fields. It was an old well with a stone mouth over 15 meters deep. The well opening was only about 60 centimeters wide, making it challenging to retrieve the body from the bottom. The police constructed a tripod with iron poles, and after over an hour of continuous effort, they managed to retrieve a male body. According to the forensic report, this man was approximately 45 years old and in good health, with no significant injuries on his body except for minor burns from rubbing against the well walls during the fall. On the victim's left hand, there were a bunch of keys, a pack of cigarettes, 200 yuan, and a wristwatch. There were no other documents to identify the victim. The body was retrieved with the head facing downward and the legs upward. Based on this information, the police concluded that the victim had committed suicide by plunging his head into the well. The news of this death caused shock throughout the entire village. The urgent task at hand is to determine the identity of the victim, and the police quickly collected samples and sent them to the provincial police headquarters for DNA testing. However, due to severe decomposition of the body, the comparison results will take some time. Meanwhile, the police in Nanxi District have hired a professional team to continue the search at the bottom of the well, using local expertise in retrieval, hoping to find useful clues to identify the victim. After 3 hours of searching, the retrieval team did not find any results. The divers were exhausted after spending a long time in the water, as the well was over 15 meters deep. Based on their experience, they believed that if they continued digging deeper, they would only retrieve mud from the bottom of the well. However, the police in Duzhou City remained determined to continue dredging the well for further search. After 4 hours of searching, they found a men's t-shirt and a pair of different fabric shoes. These items were believed to have slipped off when the victim struggled while submerged headfirst in the water. What caught everyone's attention the most was a necklace made of braided cord, with a white stone encased in a thin gold leaf pendant. Subsequent DNA testing revealed that the victim was a perfect match with the suspect Wang Chiang. The police in Nanxi District, Hebei Province, informed the police in Duzhou City, and Wang Chiang's relatives confirmed that those items belonged to him. Thus, the perpetrator of the case had committed suicide, perhaps due to exhaustion from the constant tension and evading. According to the forensic report, there was nothing in Wang Chiang's stomach, and he only had 200 yuan on him. This indicates that the suspect had reached a dead end and decided to end his own life. The Duzhou police considered this a very special and dramatic case, as money had cost 3 lives in a painful and tragic manner. In this incident, it was essentially a murder case between a debtor and a lender. Indeed, Liu Fa had owed Wang Chiang for quite some time, but he had no intention of evading the debt. The reality was that he didn't have enough money and only had 10,000 yuan left to pay for his wife's medical treatment. However, Wang Chiang was also facing many difficulties in life. His wife had left him, and his granddaughter had a congenital illness that needed treatment. Moreover, his job was not going well. All these pressures piled up on him at once. Perhaps he thought that both Liu Fei and his wife had salaries but didn't want to pay the money. But the reality was that Liu Fa's situation wasn't any better. After the accident, Liu Fei and his wife also fell ill and needed treatment. Their circumstances were also very difficult. Each person has their own life, and we don't know what they are going through, so let's not rush to judgment in this case. It is truly regrettable that all three people lost their lives due to the hardships of life. Wang Qiang regretted his actions during his escape because the money he had killed for was not for his own use, but to treat his granddaughter. Although he needed a lot of money during his escape, he did not bring a single penny from the money he obtained. It seems that from the moment he committed the murder, he had considered suicide. However, he stopped and left after igniting the gas cylinder and opening the window because of his tender and penniless grandchild who couldn't afford medical treatment. Wang Qiang met and handed over the last sum of money to his son and then designated the place to abandon the car. Although he was a serious offender, a cold-blooded murderer, who had killed 2 victims when Wang Qiang hugged his younger brother and watched him walk away, he paced back and forth with a restless and remorseful demeanor. Perhaps those moments were tormenting the murderer's mind even more. It serves as a life lesson about controlling emotions and rejecting violence. How do you feel about today's case? Leave a comment so we can discuss. And if you liked it, don't hesitate to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.